Okay. So like I said, yeah, you're all very welcome to Literacy for Liberation. And this is a webinar specifically for the community and voluntary sector. My name's Derv Ryan and I am the Literacy Development and Outreach Worker here in NALA. Whether today is a refresh, you might be very familiar with NALA.
Derv, you've accidentally muted yourself.
Pardon me, people trying to get into the room and I'm muting myself. Back on. So yeah, well, like I said, whether today is a bit of a refresh for you, you're familiar with NALA's work and adult literacy in general, or if it's brand new, we hope it's really useful for everyone. I'm joined today by several of my colleagues. They're very supportive here. We have our CEO, Colleen Doobie, our Policy Officer, Helen Ryan, Fergus Dolan, our Literacy Development Officer, Aoife Mulhall, our Communications Officer. So lots of support here today, and lots of us to ask, questions towards the end. So today we're going to look at three broad areas: the literacy, numeracy, and digital literacy needs in Ireland today amongst adults, the importance of literacy for life, all the different aspects of life where we use these skills and why they're so important, and then taking a literacy friendly approach. So you within the community and voluntary sector, how you can promote and use a literacy friendly approach. So I'll be speaking first, then my colleague Mara Salmon, who is a board member of NALA and a member of the student subcommittee, and then my colleague Helen Ryan, who is policy officer with NALA, will talk to us about using a literacy friendly approach. So in a nutshell, what NALA does is support organisations to use this literacy friendly approach and to support adults to improve their literacy, numeracy and digital literacy needs. We'd work with lots of different stakeholders, people that working in the public sector, the private sector, and nonprofits and charities like yourselves to take this literacy friendly approach, improve communications and ensure that all people have access to the information and services they need. We also would do research around adult literacy, numeracy and digital literacy. And this would all inform our policy work and advocacy for a whole society approach to adult literacy. A lot of this work culminated in the Adult Literacy for Life strategy that was launched in 2001 by Simon Harris, the Minister for Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science. And NALA had advocated for this strategy for a really long time. It was to take an approach that is cross-governmental, cross-economy and cross-society. And like we like to say in NALA, literacy is everybody's business. And the only way that we can serve people with unmet literacy, numeracy and digital skills, digital literacy needs the best is if we're all part of it. So now I suppose the organisation's focus is very much on supporting and pushing for the implementation of this strategy. So just looking at literacy from the bird's eye view, for us, literacy is reading and understanding text, listening and speaking, writing, numeracy. And when we say numeracy, we're talking about everyday maths. So for example, people splitting a bill in a restaurant, looking at a bus timetable and trying to figure out when you need to leave your house to get the bus. And then digital technology. The underlying piece that we really see in relation to adult literacy is confidence and self-esteem. When people have their literacy, numeracy and digital skills needs met, it brings about a whole different confidence in them where they can participate fully in society and access all the things that you and I are privileged and lucky enough to access. Most of the people that NALA would meet with unmet literacy needs would talk about being anxious and fearful in many different situations, particularly accessing services, coming up to a counter, say in the post office, and being quite nervous about that interaction or what they'll need to do there if someone puts a form in front of them or is asking them to write something. So confidence is a really, really big piece. You see the illustration on the right here is from one of NALA's reports, and it's showing, I suppose, all of the different aspects of life where we use our literacy, numeracy, and digital skills. Work is obviously, it's a place where, you know, depending on the job, you can be really required to use these skills, but also your rights within your job. So, for example, working out your pay slip, you know, could be a challenging task. Getting rights on your information and asserting them. Health would be a really big area where people may struggle. We would work a lot on health literacy. This could be around things like looking at the instructions on some medicine, trying to figure out dosage. That could be a challenge for somebody with unmet literacy and numeracy needs. There's also research that shows that people with lower levels of literacy would avoid health screenings and different services like that. So unfortunately, if any health issues come up, sometimes they've progressed and are at later stages than if people knew and felt confident and comfortable to attend screenings. We know from the European Health Literacy Study that 1 in 5 Irish people are not fully confident that they understand the information they receive from their health professionals. So that's a really significant piece of evidence that shows the issue that literacy, the importance, I suppose, of literacy for accessing services. Another example would be accessing information about paying bills or dealing with problems. For example, I mentioned earlier, I live in Mayo. Electricity here can go off at a moment's notice. I'm able to go onto the ESB website, the Power Check website, and know straight away when the electricity went off, when it's coming back on, and I can figure out how that's going to impact my day. If somebody has an unmet literacy, numeracy, or digital literacy, they might not be able to access that information, and you're in a different position to me then in terms of figuring out how that's going to impact their day or their needs or their family's needs. Another piece which can be really important for people is participating in social life and in the different, I suppose, community and voluntary opportunities or different things happening in the community. So, for example, an amateur drama club or a Tidy Towns group or something that, you know, lots of us would take for granted. People may fear attending those places for, you know, fear of stigma, fear of the task or an opportunity coming up where they might have to read something or write something and feeling just uncomfortable at the thought of it. So just not engaging in any of that, those opportunities at all. And something which Nala has really tried to point out is dealing with crisis in society. So, for example, we recently had our public health emergency, and it's ongoing, of course, with the COVID pandemic. And we're facing into further, unfortunately, extreme weather events as a result of climate change. These times are really crucial that everyone has the right information they need and is able to take action on it to prepare themselves and protect themselves and their families. You know, it's really important that we are taking a literacy friendly approach to ensure that everyone has that information and can do take those preparations that they need, but also that people have the opportunity to address their unmet literacy needs to prepare for that too. So today's webinar was called Literacy for Liberation. And when we were planning this webinar, I came across this quote from Septima Clark: "Literacy means liberation." Septima Clark was a citizenship and political educator and organizer during the civil rights movement in the United States. And she would have promoted the idea that education, and particularly literacy, is really key to gaining political, economic, and social power. Clark was critical in particular in supporting the education of older Black people, ensuring that all generations were participating in the civil rights movement. And, you know, I thought it was a good fit, both the quote and, of course, Septima Clark's model, because I suppose us in the community and voluntary sector are taking that social justice approach. We're concerned and recognize the level of inequality in society and trying to fight against that widening gap between the haves and the have-nots. And this is very much what we talk about when we're talking about adult literacy. It's very connected with systemic issues. So we're trying to talk about the unmet literacy needs of people to emphasize the systemic nature of the problem, not that it's an individual person's problem. So looking at the causes of unmet literacy needs, there can be a wide variety. Overwhelmingly, people will tell us that they had a really bad time at school. So that is a huge factor. For whatever reason, school was not a good place for them, was not comfortable, and they left early or, you know, didn't get the attention and support they needed. Socioeconomic reasons is a big one too. People might have had to leave school early to go to work because their position in the family, different things like that. Most of us, I suppose, were lucky to attend school and have an okay time and finish up with school with our literacy and numeracy needs met. And that privilege and that position continues to benefit us then our whole lives in what's known as the Matthew effect. We continue to be offered and are able to access further education and courses. And people who don't have the literacy needs met at those points can, you know, don't have those opportunities, are not offered or in positions where they're offered them. Other things that can impact someone's literacy could be an undiagnosed learning difficulty like dyslexia. Maybe it wasn't diagnosed, there was really poor support at the time, and they, you know, they slipped through a gap. There's also the key point, particularly about digital literacy. For a lot of people, digital literacy was not a thing when they were in school. They did not get the opportunity to learn it in school. And maybe we're in a workplace for a long time that didn't use digital technology, and then suddenly there was a need, change in demands in the workplace, and people are being asked to do something they're not comfortable with. We saw this a lot in NALA through our free phone service during the pandemic. A lot of people called quite anxious because their job had moved online and they did not feel ready for that, and they needed support on transitioning over, and probably didn't feel comfortable talking to their employer and being and looking for help within their organization. So as you can imagine, there's such a wide variety of reasons why somebody might have an unmet literacy or numeracy need, but overwhelmingly we do see the association with inequality in society. So I just have an example here for you to have a look at. This is an example of a level 1 reading task. So on the right side, we have a nutrition label from a pot of yogurt. And on the left, the question, how much sugar is in this pot of yogurt? So you or I, or those of us with our literacy needs met, we would scan down, look for the word sugar, and look for the number beside it to let us know how much sugar is in the pot. Write down, see the sugars, 1 gram, know that G represents gram. For a reader that's at a lower literacy level, they would be reading every single word very carefully, called close reading. So they'd be close reading every single word, going down through the whole list, coming up against quite challenging words, as you can see, cholesterol, potassium. And it will be quite a frustrating, difficult task. It would definitely take longer, and they may, even if they coming down, they may not know the numbers and the symbols. So for example, the G for gram. So this is just an example of level 1 reading, and this level is based on an international study organized by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. So I want to ask you a question now. What percentage of adults in Ireland do you think would have difficulty reading and understanding a text like that yogurt label? So what percentage of adults in Ireland? So that's question 1. And question 2, what percentage of adults do you think would find everyday numbers and maths difficult? So like the previous example, if 4 of us went to lunch after the webinar, the total meal might cost €60, and you have to work out how much each of us pay. That would be an example of a level 1 maths task. So if you could pop in your guesses into the chat box. So we have 1 guess here. For question 1, people are saying 20%. 30%. Yeah, and question 2, 23. So we're all around between 20 and 30%, 20% for reading, 30% for numbers. God, I love the community and voluntary sector. If you ask a question, you'll answer it. There's never any, no one holding back. It's great participation. Thank you for that, everyone. So just a few more coming in. Okay. So the percentage of adults in Ireland that are at or below level 1 of literacy and are at or below level 1 of numeracy. So the 2013 survey showed us that 18% of adults in Ireland are at or below level 1 of literacy, and that would be reading specifically. And 25% of adults in Ireland are at or below level 1 of numeracy. So this was from that international study. It's called Programme for the International Assessment of Adult Competencies. It's a mouthful, and that's called the PIAC study for short. They're actually currently doing that study this year. So the Central Statistics Office are gathering data over the next couple of months, so that hopefully by 2024 we'll have new statistics from that study. If you do come across anybody who is getting a knock on the door and being asked to do that survey, we'd really encourage you to reassure them and tell them that it's safe and it's good, because we really need to get good stats 10 years later about the unmet literacy and numeracy needs in Ireland. So that was just to give you an illustration, a kind of overview of what the situation is in Ireland at the moment. The adult skills survey, like I said, it showed those percentages, but it also showed that Ireland is ranked 17th in literacy and 18th in numeracy out of 24 countries. It's quite low, you know, and it also confirmed that there's an association between having a lower literacy level, earning less income, more likely to be unemployed, and to have poor outcomes in health, like I had mentioned earlier. So there's a real strong correlation between literacy levels and all sorts of outcomes within a person's life. So now I'm going to hand you over to Mara Salmon, who, like I said before, is a board member of NALA and a member of the student subcommittee. So Maris, over to you.
Thank you, Deirdre. First, I'd just like to say thank you very much for everyone registering and listen to what I want to say. I'm really grateful, and thank you for the effort that you put in. And from all of us that are like me, had a problem with reading or writing or numeracy or whatever, it's the one thing that you get when you go back to education is a voice you're listened to. Because when you're outside society, is the only way I can explain it. You don't interact with other people. You don't want to interact with other people because they might find out this terrible secret you have, the secret that it's been reinforced that it's a weakness from the day that you started school. When you discovered yourself that you have a problem with reading, you're not as fast as others have picked it up. Myself, I had a problem with nerves. It's a nervous condition. I still have it, but now I can control it. But as a child, I couldn't control it. You look at written words down on paper, and they just all simply just melt in together. You know, you can't make sense of it. But it wasn't picked up on for the simple reason that the school I went to, the teachers are more like crowd control really than teachers, because they were up to 40, 42, 43 in a class. And the simple fact was that the teachers themselves weren't fit for the job. You were more of a nuisance. If you couldn't keep up with the rest of them, you were a bother, and you were put down at the back of the class with a colouring book, or just keep out of the way, really. And actually, as a child, you'd be absolutely delighted with that, because then the embarrassment wasn't there. But it's picked up on by other kids, by other children, very quickly. Now, children being children, they can be very cruel, and it enforces the idea that there's something wrong. there is something wrong, but it can be corrected and could be corrected very fast if it can be picked up on. That's why I'm absolutely delighted the way things are nowadays. With kids, they pick up on a problem fast and they correct it. But going back to my generation, it wasn't there. And the simple fact is, the written word to me was always a source of embarrassment. I couldn't wait to leave school. I left school at 13, went straight into work, and hid the fact that I couldn't read or write for the next 40 years. It led me down some very dark paths. I can remember several times in jobs. We'd say when I started working first, there was nothing asked of you. There were no timesheets or no safe passes or nothing like that. But they did come in. A timesheet was absolutely out of the question. If you had to write down what you were doing, no, that's I could do work. I had no problem doing. I was always handy and a good timekeeper, and I could always keep a job. I remember one occasion I was working in England. I worked in England for a good few years, and I got off the buildings at one stage, which I was delighted of because it was a change of pace for me. But I was working in a warehouse, and it was a supplier for the builders. But what it was, it's all this timber and size of timber and grades of timber. And I could tell the size of timber, the grade of timber, by a look rather than reading any label. And I thought, Jesus, I was working on the forklift, stacking this stuff, and this was great, But the foreman copped me, and he copped that I was fast and I was good at what I was doing. So he said, "Listen," he said, "I'm going to take you off of that and make you store manager, not store manager, but store supplier, where you'd they would write to you and tell you the amount of stuff you need. You check it off, write down what was gone and all that. But as you can guess, writing was in it, and writing was a big factor of it. But this was a decent promotion. And of course, I said, no, I can't. I'm going back to Ireland. Thanks very much for the offer, but I'm heading back to Ireland. So I just left and I went off to another job. I never said anything about me reading and writing to him, but it wouldn't have mattered because there was no training on the job. It was as simple as that. But my point in saying that is, people like myself, we're not stupid. We can pick up trades. We can pick up, if given the chance, which I have been given now, we can learn. But the fact is, where we came from, it's ingrained in our minds to hide it. If you can pick this out, if you can see in somebody, you can't rush it onto them. I know myself, when I was, before I went back to education, if anybody mentioned anything about reading and writing, the subject was changed or I left the group. It was as simple as that. And odd time, I mentioned it to, I was talking earlier to Derva and the rest of the group there in Nala, and I was saying, in my younger days, I had a bit of trouble with the guards. I was through this lack of education, we'd say, I developed a problem with alcohol. I became an alcoholic. But I was often picked up by guards, and I remember saying to a sergeant one time in the check-in desk there, he asked me to sign my name, and I signed my name, and I said, "That's all I can do, I can't read or I can't write." And he looked at me and said, "I'm not surprised." Now, that was a smart remark from him, really, and to a lot of people, now, maybe he thought it was blackguarding as well, but to a lot of people, that'd be just brushed off. But to people like myself, no, that's stored up again in your toolbox of ways of keeping yourself down. And I mean keeping yourself down, because you won't seek help because you think that's what's ahead of you. And as far as going back to education is concerned, you can only remember what it was like at school. It was an embarrassment, children laughing at you. I know now, and you know, it isn't like that now. But for someone like me on the outside, it's still that way. If you do, the advertisement now is better. You can see there is help out there, but you're still frightened. And if you do reach out a hand, the first contact, in my opinion, is the most important. If you're shown, if you're actually listened to rather than shown, they say do an assessment. An assessment to someone like me sounds, oh, that sounds dodgy. You see, that's putting you in this box again, away from everyone else. Now, I know an assessment is important, to find out what a person's ability is, but an assessment can be done in a lot of different ways, I believe. It was done for me. I can remember when I went down to the education centre in Tramore, and I met Emma Cole. The first contact I had was with any of that's going back to education. She just talked to me, simply talked to me, and she could pick up from me what I needed. Now, I had in my mind that I wanted to learn how to read and write, and she just simply said, well, that's two different skills, reading and writing. It's something I never really understood, but you wouldn't. You think you can read, you can write, but you find out you really can't. Spelling is a different game. Computers and technology was put in after a while. It wasn't, oh yeah, well, we put you into a computer course. Well, that wasn't. If somebody said about putting me into a computer course, now that would have been a block for me straight away. Like, I just wanted to learn how to read a bit. I didn't know how to turn on a computer or anything like that. I didn't know anything about it. But a couple of months down the line, when my confidence started to rise a bit, and all of a sudden these words weren't running in to one big black blob, and I could understand. And I can remember the first time I read a sentence, I felt as proud, and I grew a foot taller. I felt like I was getting on level terms with other people. That's very important also. You got to understand that we don't feel that we're equal to other people. We feel that we're under people that have that ability. I can remember watching a fella write something down in a notebook on a building site. And I was amazed. How the hell is he doing that? Where's that coming from? How do you manage that? And I found myself staring at him, to be honest with you. And that kind of ability to me was way out of my range. But it wasn't. It was there, and it's easy, really, But I know that now. This is after 7 years of taking courses. But I knew it after 12 months. I read a book, for God's sake, The technology came into it. I was shown how to turn a computer on and the basics, and to find out the help and the education aid that a computer is. Right, there's a lot of waste of time on computers too. Facebook, for instance, you can waste a lot of time on it. Signing forms, signing up for things. Forms, to me, was an alien world to be honest with you. Signing forms now, geez, I filled out the census form on my own, for God's sake, Once you can understand it, like I said earlier, we're not stupid. If we're given the chance, we can learn. It's not people like yourself are the problem. You're the solution. The problem lies in ourselves. If there's a way, and it's like I said earlier, the first contact is the most important. Patience is a big word. You have to show patience towards a person. There's a lot of setbacks on the road to education, but once you get in there, if you get in and you realize that people are helping you just for the sake of helping you and giving you your own space and your own time, there's a lot of organizations out there, even back in my time, would help. But the simple fact is they were hard to get to. my help came from a counsellor. I went to see after finally the alcohol got to me, and I ended up in hospital. And in hospital, I can only say it was the hand of God really that helped me. A counsellor came in to see somebody else, and that person, we're all down in one ward, alcoholic ward, that was it. And that person had already just gone, you know, that's alcohol for you. But she came over and she just started talking to me, and I opened up, and I never talked to anyone, not when I was sober, and especially not with when you're coming down from a feed of drink, because I tell you, the nerves get right up there. But I opened up, and that's why I say the hand of God, because there's no other reason for it. When I opened up to her, she arranged for me to see a counsellor once I got out of the hospital, and I did. Now that service is absolutely fantastic, because they will listen to you. And I said, I want to learn how to read and write. I can't read or write. I never could. I can write my name because it's through familiarity of the word, but I couldn't read. I never could, you know. And it amazed me that I could look at a form, and even to that day, I could look at a form, and it made no sense whatsoever to me. It amazes me now. I can look at it, and I can just think, what the hell was I thinking, you know? Why couldn't I see it then? I couldn't see it then because the idea was up here that I was unable to read or write. I could never learn how to read or write. And this was my station in life. It's your job. And God knows it's not an easy job, but God bless you for being there. It's your job to pull people back from that. And they want to be pulled back from that. They want to learn how to read and write and do maths, numeracy. They want that. They want to be equal to everyone else, no matter what age you are. You know, it's a person's. It's ingrained in a person. The curiosity to find out what the hell was wrong there. You know, age is a factor. Okay, it can be a big stumbling block. You hit a certain age, you say, what's the point now? I'm 50, I'm 60. I got on as far as now. But that's also another nudge you can give people. If they get a taste for it, they won't stop. I can guarantee you, because I couldn't stop now if I tried. The only thing to stop me is the grave, to be honest with you, because I have a love now for education and reading and writing. I have a love for it, and that was given to me by people like yourselves. And that's why I do this. If I can give an ounce of what I feel now to people, the liberation, the fact that you have a voice, which is a big thing, to have people to listen to what you're saying, and no matter what way you say it, you're not alone anymore. And that's actually another problem. My problem is as Dervla was saying, it's fairly big, you know. Back in the time, reading and writing is, but you don't believe that when you're in there. You believe you're the only one. You know, you're odd, you're different. You're hiding the fact. I leave on this note. If you get the chance, the one bit of advice I would say, if you can get the chance, give patience more than anything. You will be rewarded. You will. I can't thank people like yourselves enough. I really can't. And I don't think I ever will. I give this little bit back. That's all I can do. But I will give it to the day that I stop breathing, because I believe if one person sees it and comes back, but that's my part. Your part is when they come back, when they come to you and hold a hand out, be patient with them. Listen, thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. That it was truly an excellent input, and I think everybody will appreciate your experience and expertise and taking the time to share it with us today. You know, you've skilled us for sure this morning. If anybody has a question or comments for Maurice, please do pop it in the chat. We're already getting brilliant feedback, Maurice. People saying the inspiration and thank you for sharing, and they'll be sharing with other people they know. And I think that's something that we really see the impact of. We often talked about, you know, the importance of people who have had the experience and have felt the impact of this leading the way in terms of raising awareness and advocating for change, because fundamentally, you know it inside out, whereas someone like myself doesn't. So it's so impactful. And you know, like we had said earlier, if anybody wants to do further training or talk about this within your organizations, absolutely will. Maris, I recommend you get into the chat box and see all of the reactions. It'll give you a lift. So again, like I said, pop any questions into the chat box now, or we'll get to them a little bit later on. So next, we're going to have my colleague Helen Ryan, Policy Officer with NALA, and Helen's going to speak to you about taking that literacy-friendly approach within your organisation, and speaking to some of those things that Maris mentioned there, and how you can be there for people with unmet literacy needs.
Thanks, Derva. And I know you're putting up the few slides we have to share with people. And again, Maris, just to say thank you so much. It's always the highlight of all of our sessions, really, just to hear from, you know, the lived experience. And thank you very much for that. And really, I suppose, NALA's work around the literacy friendly approach, Maris, is, you know, sharing stories with people on frontline services, and today with community voluntary sector organisations, but asking organisations to take that literacy friendly approach. So like the example you gave where it's dismissed or there's a judgment space, that's not what a service should be offering. And a literacy friendly approach, and what NALA works with organisations, is around being aware. So going in and giving literacy awareness training, having Maurice or Michael Duffy or whoever it is speak to people and share their experience and ask people to think about and take account that lots of people are going to come into services and they may struggle with the bit of reading. They may dread filling in that form, as we all do, and they may be really nervous of using touchscreens, thinking of hospitals at the minute. If anyone was in Tala Hospital, and sure many others have touchscreens going in, so that staff will be aware of it, take account of it, and then where we can, and this is the big challenge for a lot of services, can you remove a barrier? So a great example, you might say, well, what does removing a literacy related barrier be? Well, again, if people think about going into your hospital, you go to the desk, emergency department, hello, what's your name? And somebody is typing it behind the screen. What's your address? You know, what do you hear? If you refer a letter, have you to pay, all that stuff. But the fact that they got rid of forms, now I don't think they did it from a literacy perspective. It was probably more of a taking time, and obviously COVID, then no one wanted to touch a pen, so it was all of that. But that is removing a barrier. So listening and speaking. So that's a lot of the work I do, and we were around talking to organizations. I always say to people, look, if they take anything away from this, listening and speaking. You chat to somebody. We're all humans. You know, how are you today? How can I help you? Basic customer service. And of course, this is obvious stuff to the C&V sector, because in all fairness, this sector tends to excel a bit better on that. The sector we try to really struggle with sometimes are working with frontline services and public services, and they're getting much better, obviously, as we work with them. And then some of the retail and private sectors, banks, for example, sometimes need a bit of awareness raising on this. So NALA's worked, we've got some 10 standards developed over the last number of years, and we work with any organisation to look at these things around communications, staff awareness and policies and procedures. So again, look, I could have a whole hour here just going into what we can do and the audit tools and everything. But if anyone is interested in more details on that, my email is there, and you'll get me online, and we can come and talk to you in a little bit more detail. The next slide there that Derv has for us is just around, I suppose, the why around this. And again, very much obvious to lots of you working in the sector. You know that, and I've had this when you do the training, people say, well, I know when someone comes in and I know that how will I know that they can't read that information leaflet? Or how will I know they can't fill in a form? Well, you won't know. That's the point. So, and nor should you know. Nobody needs to disclose that if they don't want to. The literacy friendly approach is, let's take this universal precautions, lovely idea. Let's treat everyone like everyone needs a hand. So are you all right with that form there now? Would you like me to give you a hand with it? So we're not saying nobody, don't think you look like you can read it, or jeepers, you look like you're going to struggle with using a pen there today. Nothing to do with that. So it's around breaking it down, and just sort of how your approach is really important. Literacy is situational. So again, we all have spiky profiles. My literacy can be all right now today, but I go to the doctor at 4 o'clock. The doctor gives me a diagnosis and I go into absolute shock and fear, and I hear nothing that they say. So my health literacy in a certain place and time, in that context, jumps down. Or Maurice, you mentioned policing and legal. Geez, if I went to court now, I wouldn't understand half of the language in court because it's not my world. So our literacy will change depending on the situation that we're all in. And then the final one is around sort of everyone benefits. I mean, we know this. So in the end, and I'm pitching to everyone, the converted here, but when we work with the government services and whatever, and private sector to employers, we're making that pitch and we're saying, if you wrote things in plain English, everyone benefits from that, because it means that you don't have people going back to you and so on with different queries. So in the next one, we just maybe have a think yourselves. We're just asking you, I mean, if we were in in an ideal world, we'd all be together in a room, but the joys of Zoom does mean that we can have 40 people from all over the country here. But I suppose just think for a little minute about your own work, and we're interested to know, have you come across people with unmet literacy, numeracy and digital literacy needs? And then maybe if you've any examples of that. So we'd be sort of offering today, if you wouldn't mind, you could share it either in the chat, or if somebody would like to put up their hand and give us an example, we'd appreciate that too. But did anyone ever adapt your approach to support a person with unmet needs? So again, I'll give you an example of that. Worked with the local authority while people are thinking there, and the local authority were doing a complaints procedure, and but the complaint was very much about, you must put in a letter and different things. And in our conversation with them, we said, that's a bit exclusionary though for anyone that, isn't comfortable with either writing something and then secondly, emailing it in. So in our conversation with the local authority, they went for a phone number. So they had it also, so you could put in the formal way, or the digital and the letter way. And then there was also a line you could ring and give some feedback or some complaint into that. And then someone would ring you and help you. So if there is anyone that has any examples, so Sinead there has given us one that helps someone to set up speech to text. Yeah, unbelievable. Like many of the literacy students are better at their smartphone use than I am now, because they use things like voice notes and speech to text. You're so right, there's an awful lot more there. Paula, you have your hand up. Would you like to share?
Thanks, Helen. So myself and my colleague Nicola, we work for Independent Living Movement Ireland, and there was a project, the Onside project, that started really in 2019, and it's just finishing up now this year. And obviously COVID hit in March 2020. So what Onside did was, it was basically like a technology kind of course that participants got a free tablet, and they were kind of taught how to use the tablet and information sessions. But obviously Zoom wasn't as well known then as it is now. So it was very new to some people. But when a lot of services and things shut down and people were kind of left to their own devices, ILMI had the Onside project for the border counties, and really they used Zoom to connect disabled people virtually, to have that communal space. And the community navigators, the workers for each county, they took the time to connect with every disabled person that wanted to sign up for Onside and talk them through how to use Zoom, different like easy to read manuals, and they'd have the technology that they'd have to deliver, and they'd like go through with each participant how to set up their tablet and how to use their tablet, just so that it's accessible to everyone. Because obviously for disabled people, another barrier is transport, and especially with the cost of living. Whereas at least if you're on a Zoom, you touched on it there, Helen, that there's not that barrier, that we can all connect virtually from all across the country. So that was a big success from Onside, and that's actually something that we're mirroring with our project, the Virtual Online Inclusive for Communities for Empowerment. We don't have the technology that Onside would have had available, but we're using Zoom to connect with disabled people in 7 counties in the southeast. And we will help any disabled people that need assistance in setting up the technology, or if they need information in easy to read formats, and to make it as accessible as possible, to make sure that everyone feels included and that it's as inclusive as possible, and that it's not exclusionary in any way, shape or form.
Great, Paula. No, that's a great example. And I suppose COVID, you're so right, threw lots of us into that digital space. And I see some other, people here are talking about adapting ESOL classes, or as they were adapting, they had to adapt because people had literacy needs in their first language. So absolutely, as every tutor will know, you have to pivot how many times within the class when something comes up. Updating training forms, lovely, using pictures, really good. The video, Grania mentions there, using app video messages to communicate. Absolutely, videos. We did a lovely lady, Mary O'Hara, spoke yesterday at another health literacy webinar. She works in St. Patrick's Mental Health Services, and she has a lovely way of dealing with people through the information centre, because she'll say to them things like, will I send you a little video on that topic to start you off? Would you prefer, how are you with the reading? Would you, oh, a video, lovely, thanks very much. And then they'll come back to her, and after they've watched the video, then she'll have a chat. Would you like more now? What can I give you? Rather than handing them a big thick, she was saying there's a big book that's 600 pages that frightened the living daylights out of most of us. So never mind if you're trying to look at it from, reading and stuff. So I thought that was a really nice one as well. And then Avian is telling us here that we have volunteers in Wicklow Travellers Group who support members of the traveller community on a one-to-one basis. That's really great. There's nothing beats a one-to-one interaction with people, and organising workshops, the phones and the digital. Digital is literacy now. It's there. We have to just embrace it, and it's been very positive for lots of people, and it's great, but we do need to make sure everyone's brought up and gets the opportunity to get those skills. And then Anne-Marie is saying to us, while tutoring, a glossary of relevant terms. Yeah, brilliant, Anne-Marie. That's really important, sharing with people language and terms that you might be using, whether it's in a class or in a workshop you're giving. That's a really great suggestion. And again, Tracy's saying so more there with the digital, one volunteer with Age Action. Yes, and Age Action are great. They do lots of work on the digital literacy. Great. Well, look, thank you so much, people, for sharing. That's really great to get some examples in. And as Derv said, the CMV sector are great at telling us stuff and giving us some examples. And again, Colleen mentioned earlier there, if there's any ways we can support you in NAL, and Derv will go into some of them at the end, please do come back to us on that. So I have a few very, very short slides to go then, and then I'll hand back over to Derv. So again, when a lot of the work that we do around awareness raising, we chat and say to people, look, here are some possible signs, be that the body language, people maybe, and this has happened numerous times when I go out and give training, you'll have people go, yeah, I had loads of people who wouldn't come over to the desk, so people sort of hovering there, but not wanting to come over because, again, they're nervous. Olive always speaks about having this thing on her shoulder called anxiety. So she's just afraid that you're going to ask her to fill in a form, even though she's not there to do any of that. There is that nervousness when we're dealing with public services. And then the reluctance of filling it in, maybe asking for information that's already there. And again, in the world, sometimes people, they're great at having coping mechanisms and other literacy supports, but might say things like, well, my partner, or I have help at home when I go. So how you then respond is important. So again, on the next slide, we'll be looking at some of those suggestions. And Maurice, I think you had great examples there, but about patience, I wrote it down. I was like, I just think patience being the key piece, but that idea of being understanding, sensitive, and absolutely non-judgmental. So, we need to just break that stigma down, all of us, normalize it. Literacy, you have a literacy need. So that's why we don't use the word difficulty, gap, even I don't like low, poor. Like, let's strip that language. That's awful. That's a label. So look, literacy needs, it's a challenging one to sort of get out. What do you mean by it? But it's a much more respectful way of saying it than the other language. Again, if you're dealing with people front face, again, explain information and instructions clearly. tell them, look, this is a tough form. Do a lot of work with the housing departments, and we say to them, some great people on housing sections will tell the person, the HAP form, for example, think this is a shocking form, you know, and I'm sorry, it's a big yoke now. I don't like, but I'm here and I can give you a hand. And those little suggestions and ideas, because when you're dealing with people, as you know, you don't really need to know whether they can read or write. It's not, you know, whose business, that's the person's business. What you need to know is, can I give you a hand with the thing I need you to do here now today? So I need you to fill out that form, because actually I'm going for an appointment, an operation, let's say at 6 o'clock. So I actually have to fill the form out today. I can't take it home. So saying to someone, are you okay with filling out this form? Or would you like me to give you a hand? You know, and that's okay. And again, if you're handing someone a leaflet, you might say, are you comfortable enough? Is there someone at home or when you get home, are you okay with having a read of that? Or would you like me to go through it now? You know, and so that, again, the community and voluntary sector would tend to have a bit more time perhaps to spend with people on this. I know when I'm working with health services, the big pushback there is, do you think I have time to be asking every person that comes in here for a health appointment, can I help them with that? And I mean, again, I push that back and say, would you think everyone's going to say, yeah, thanks a million, I'd love to hear from you, if you can read it, fine. So most people are going to, and most people with literacy needs, and Maurice would tell us this, and other people will probably say, I'm grand, thanks, because they will have a literacy support at home or outside. But what about the person who lives on their own or doesn't have the literacy support? That's why a question like that can mean such a difference for someone. So how you were communicating then is our next piece. Again, we could run whole workshops on this and be here all day talking about the whole piece on communication. And there are some really good resources as well that we can forward on out there. In the DEPR has done a really good, the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, we've worked with them on a toolkit. NALA has our own plain English guidelines. All of these things, I'm sure, you know, you're probably doing, but there's no harm in just remembering and revising and looking at that. And I suppose the key piece there is around, you know, plain English. And on the next one, when we ask you about, people say, well, what is plain English? It is a style of presenting information so that somebody understands it the first time they read or hear it. So if you're looking for a little bit of homework when we're finished here and you go get a cup of tea over lunch, or when you're doing that and you're reading a newspaper article or a leaflet or something, just read a line. And if you understand it the first time you've read it, it's in plain English, and that's brilliant. But if you've had to read it a second time or get a pen out and start breaking it down, it's not as clear as it could be. And that goes for everyone. NALA works really, you know, we push this a lot, we lobby for this, and we work with public services to try and get them better than they are. And the C&V sector as well, we've worked a little bit and done some training with you over the years. But I think plain English is really a key piece, and we can you know, we can work with you more on that. And as I say, look, come back to us if that's something on the feedback, and when Derv sends an evaluation form, if that's something you want more of, do please let us know. On the next one then, why plain English matters. Well, I suppose it's obvious to us, and we know, and we're working in it, and we have research to back this up, and speaking to the converted here, but sometimes we need to make this case. That's sort of the business case to why we need public services in particular and private services too, and like financial insurance and so on, to do this. But there is research to back that up as well. And then the next slide just has, like I say, we could be at this all day. Derv will send you on the slides. Couple of tips there. Usually people are aghast when we talk about font and think, what did you get from the session? That I'll never use Times New Roman again, and I'm now going to use a sans serif Arial font. But look, there's a ton of tips, and as I say, we don't have time to go deep dive into them today, but we'll have the slides and you can follow it up. And we have a great book called Writing and Design Tips as well that you can have a look. There's an example that we're going to share with you as well that you'll have on your on the slides. It's if you're thinking, what does it look like in practice? So that's a sort of a computer room rules there. You can see it's written in the font that isn't good, which is Times New Roman, capital letters, underline, italic, the things that are not as easy to read, and justified as well, you know, where all the text has to fit on the top sentence. Whereas on the next slide, you'll see that when you put things into plain English, they can just look easier to read. That's the font has changed there. We've used a little bit of bold. We've changed a bit of the language. And as I say, we're happy to do a lot more on plain English with you at another point in time, but we just didn't want to lose the opportunity to share a few tips with you today. And thank you. That's it, Jerv. I'm going to go back over to you for the last few.
Great, thanks a million, Helen. That was a bit of a whistle stop tour. But we do want to keep to an hour today because we know you're all very busy, but we'll forward all the resources, the slides, and definitely just the start of a conversation, you know, we can come to organizations and work with you or talk to you over the phone about a lot of this. So just to outline some of the supports that exist for people with unmet literacy, numeracy and digital needs. The education and training boards, you'll be very familiar with them. Obviously, you're probably all working with them in different ways already. Adult literacy services sit within the ETBs. There's usually an adult literacy centre in every big, you know, decent sized town in the country. The services there, they're free and confidential. Free, obviously extremely important, does not interact with the social welfare payments at all, so no fears on that if people are worried. It's confidential in the sense that obviously people might feel a bit of stigma and they wouldn't want other people to know. You can do small groups or one-to-one tuition, like Maurice mentioned. One-to-one can, you know, build confidence before going into a group. Train tutors, and we've gotten very good feedback over the years from people's experiences within the adult education, adult literacy centres. I'd recommend, if you are in a geographical place or dealing with people in the same places around the country, you would get to know your adult literacy organiser in the local adult literacy centre. Find out what's going on there, the kind of things they offer, have that relationship, know the specific contact, and be able to give that information to people you know, because it's just easier than giving, you know, just ring this random number. But if you have the specific person, if you know where the building is, the centre, where it actually is, you can refer to that. You know, people will know those centres from over the years for different things. So it's good to just be quite specific when if you have that sensitive conversation about available supports. You can work through, towards a QQI award in those centres. You don't have to. Everything is at the person's pace and is based on their needs and goals. A person could turn up because they wanted to deal with a citizenship form. They may deal with that with the tutor and never come back. It's okay with whatever people need to do themselves. And then from ourselves, we have the free phone service Monday to Friday. And basically that's designed to be the first step. So if somebody wants to find out the different options for getting support on literacy, numeracy or digital, they can speak to someone there and talk about the education training boards, the adult literacy services. We also offer over the phone tutoring, which can be maybe a step for people before they go into a centre for some people. And then we have an online platform, Learn with Nala, which has free English, maths, computer and personal development courses. Some of them again are QQI accredited, but you don't have to go down that road if that's not what you want. And the free phone service can provide, you know, technical help around accessing that platform. Like I said, we'll do literacy awareness workshops and training with organizations, and we can have that conversation with any of you that would like that. And again, that plain English training and editing service that Helen mentioned. We'd also produce a range of learning resources, so workbooks, and you know, both for tutors doing literacy tutoring, but also for learners who can work on it on their own or with the tutor. This just to give you a picture of our online. I'll forward you on more information about that. And this is just a couple of the different workbooks, some of the most popular ones. Like Helen said, to be on the slides, and you can ask more about that or look for copies if you want to have a look through them. So speeding through, we have, we're just 1 minute over midday. We won't cut you off. If anyone did have any questions and answer, we can answer now. Please pop them in. I know some of you might want to head off, but if you have any questions, please let us know. There's a couple of us here and that could answer. So you can go on the mic or you can go in the chat. If anybody has anything there.
I was just a couple of years, like back in 2009. Sorry, my name is Nicola. With Isle of May. I did the literacy tutor training back in 2009 in Cork, and at that time, after it was 2 years of volunteering, I think it was, you had the opportunity to do a distance course in adult education with Waterford Institute of Technology. I don't know if that's still the case, or because I know the funding was cut shortly after because the Celtic Tiger kind of, boom went the bust.
It definitely is the training in adult literacy. Helen, I'm not sure if it's available in distance or if you have to attend.
I think there are, sorry, I can come in there because we
Thanks.
work quite closely with SETU. So yes, there are still a range of distance options. The best thing is to have a look on their website, because they actually just approved recently a number of kind of standalone modules. So even if you didn't want to do kind of a full kind of accredited level 6 or level 7 course, there are some standalone modules. So the best thing is have a look at their website, because there's a combination of blended and I think still distance learning modules.
Great, thank you, Colleen.
And Aoife, Aoife Mulhall put up the link in the
Oh, brilliant.
chat
For
there
the
for
we have a question there from Katrina.
Thanks, Derv and Colleen. I'm actually from Waterford, from SETU,
Okay.
from the Literacy Development Centre.
Great.
So yeah, sorry, I hadn't got my tag on my name there. So if anyone does want to contact me, I'll put my email address into the chat box as well. And if anyone has any questions about the programs, I'm happy to help.
That's
And was
great,
that an
Katrina. I'll
accurate
forward that on.
assessment of your provision? As I said, I know it's constantly changing and expanding. So do you still have some distance learning modules?
We're actually if there's an outreach for a particular ETB, it would probably be distance. But if you come onto any of our programs, we are doing more. It's a blend this year, and it's face-to-face for the first day of the module and then online for the rest of the days.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks. For
Again, that's a synopsis too.
Thanks, Katrina. That's
Thank you.
I'll pass on your email if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll stick it into the chat box there anyway as well. Thanks.
Great. And we actually had some questions ahead of time. I think one person had asked about the signs of, maybe someone with unmet needs. I think that was covered.
Don't let her go out. Close the door.
Thought we had a question. And one person asked about unmet literacy needs amongst people who are in prison. And I can just say that we have a stat there that said 41% of people in prison had left school before the age of 14. Bit of an old stat from a 2003 report, but it does indicate those associations with inequality and literacy. And I think there was somebody else that asked about integrating literacy, but we'll follow up with you after. I'm going to get a colleague to follow up with you. So if there's no other questions, we might finish up just to let everybody know. I think we did well, 4 minutes past 12, not so bad. But thank you all for today, and I'll follow you up there with all the resources and information shared. Thanks a million. Take care.
Thanks, Morris.